Hello, friends. How are you? It's me, Mr. B. Happy Tuesday. I'm happy to be with you on this Tuesday of Holy Week. And I'm going to read you a little bit about Holy Week today. But first, let's greet each other the way we start every day these days in first grade. So get your elbows ready. You ready? Here we go. Elbow, elbow, namaste. So I know yesterday in religion we watched a video about the first Easter, and really this week, Holy Week, is the part of the Easter story where all of the teachings of Jesus and everything we think about during Lent, it all comes together to fruition. So you watch that video. And now I'm going to read you a nonfiction book about Easter, and it'll be interesting to compare the book to the video, but also to think about what is the main idea of this story, what are some of the details we want to get in our brain for the rest of our lives, and what was the author's purpose in writing this story. So the story is entitled The First Easter, and the author is Carol Heyer. The subtitle, The Story of the First Easter. So we're not going to read the whole book today, but we'll read a part of it today and we'll finish it up over the course of this week. It starts out like this. It says, "At Easter time, we think of fresh new grass." You know what? I'm sure you can't see that. Let me try it again. At Easter time, we think of fresh new grass and baby animals and warm golden sunshine. We think of baskets full of candy and brilliantly colored eggs. But most of all, at Easter time, we think about Jesus and all that he did for us. Jesus was born in a manger in Bethlehem on the first Christmas day. Right, so you remember this story from Christmas time. Angels told shepherds about the baby, and the shepherds went to go see the child. You remember about a great star that shone above the manger, and its sparkling light led the wise men to the baby Jesus. They came on camels, and they brought gifts, and they worshiped the newborn child, the Son of God. Many years before Jesus was born, prophets, wise men and women, had told people to expect that God's Son would come on earth and save the world from sin. You know, a prophet is someone who gets a message or a vision from God, and these people who knew that God would send his Son, they were prophets. Okay, so when Jesus became a man, he chose 12 men to be his disciples. They traveled with Jesus, and he taught them about God. Jesus healed the sick and crippled. Everywhere he went, many people gathered to hear him speak. Little children came to hear him also, and he greeted them with love and kindness. And this is the thing about Jesus is, at first, a lot of people, they really didn't believe, or they weren't sure whether they should believe that he was the Son of God. So how could he persuade them that he was the Son of God? He did something no one else could do. He performed miracles. Things like bringing sight back to the blind, curing people who were deathly ill, bringing people who had died back to life. Nobody else could do those things except for God or the Son of God. When Jesus performed those miracles, then people began to believe that he really was the Son of God. So when the time came for Jesus to um, traveled to Jerusalem with his disciples, he came into Jerusalem on a donkey. So Holy Week starts when Jesus enters the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is like the capital city of Israel. And during Holy Week, the people from the Jewish religion, they celebrate a holiday called Passover. And the meaning of Passover is it helps people remember when Moses led the Jewish people who were slaves to the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh of Egypt, how Moses freed them from the king of Egypt. So people in Israel, who are mostly Jewish, they celebrate Passover the same time that we're celebrating Easter. Now, Jesus grew up as a member of the Jewish religion. So he was going into Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, during the time of the Passover holiday. Now remember, we've talked about how at the time Israel was not free. It was controlled by the Roman Empire, the Romans, who were the most powerful army in the world. And so when Jesus went around Israel performing miracles and talking about how God would help set people free, people misunderstood. They thought that he meant God would help them get free of the Romans. Really, what Jesus meant is that God would help people get free of sin, things like being selfish, things like being mean, things like hurting others, and he would help people make the world a better place. But people didn't understand that. They thought he was talking about getting rid of the Romans, so they thought that when Jesus came to Jerusalem, he would come in on a great horse that was the symbol of military power. But guess what Jesus came in on? He came in on riding into Jerusalem on a donkey or a mule, which is a symbol of people that don't have enough money to own a horse. See, Jesus could have done anything he wanted. He's the Son of God. But he always made choices that put him with the people who were poor and who didn't have as much. And he lived with them, and he walked with them, and he talked with them, and he prayed with them, and he sang with them, and he acted like them. So when it came time for him to enter Jerusalem during Passover, he came on a mule. People lined the streets to see Jesus, and they laid palm branches on the ground to make a soft carpet for the donkey's feet. Jesus entered Jerusalem surrounded by love and glory on this, the first Palm Sunday. So yesterday, I'm reading this to you on Monday, but you're hearing this on Tuesday. So this past Sunday, 2 days ago for you, was Palm Sunday, which is the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on his donkey. Jesus went to the temple, which is like the big church where people worshiped. But when he got there, he was shocked because inside there were men buying and selling animals. More than that, they were betting on things. They were trading other goods and services just to make money, which isn't what church is supposed to be about at all. Jesus was shocked and angry. He threw the money boxes in the air, and the men ran away. This made the temple leaders very angry, and they wanted to get rid of Jesus. So here's some pictures of some of the people in the temple having their coins and their money thrown to the ground. After the temple was clear, Jesus went inside to worship and to pray. When he was in the temple, Jesus talked about God's words with the chief priests. So he talked to the chief priests about what God wanted. They asked Jesus many questions, and they tried to trick him into saying something wrong because, remember, they did not like this Jesus of Nazareth. They thought he was a threat to their power, and they were looking for a reason to have him arrested or even worse. So the priests were asking him questions, trying to trick him into saying something that would get Jesus in trouble. The priests asked Jesus, what was God's most important commandment? And Jesus answered, the most important commandment is to love God with all your heart. And then Jesus said, but I'll give you a new commandment. You must love your neighbor as yourself. This made the priests very angry because they didn't think that Jesus had the power to name a new commandment besides the 10 commandments which Moses received from God. So here's a picture of some of the priests, and that might be Jesus. More and more people listened to Jesus as he taught people about God. The temple leaders and priests grew more afraid of Jesus, and they began to plot against him. They looked for a way to have Jesus arrested. So this is a picture of some of the priests and the temple leaders talking about coming up with a plan to get Jesus in trouble and have him arrested because they were afraid that Jesus was going to take away their power. So I think I'm going to stop it right here today. And then tomorrow we'll find out what happens next. So we've learned about some of the details that we learned about. We learned about how we were reminded about the story of how Jesus was born and about the star and the wise men and the shepherds. It's always good to have those details in our head. We learned about how Jesus came into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. We learned about how he came into Jerusalem not on a big white military horse, but on a poor mule or donkey. We also learned about how when Jesus got into Jerusalem, he went to the temple and he saw that the people were using the temple to buy and sell things, which isn't what the temple is for. It's a house of God. And Jesus was so angry, he flung the traders' money on the floor and he told them to get out of the temple. And then when they were gone, we learned about the detail about how Jesus prayed to God, and then he talked to the priests, and the priests and leaders tried to get Jesus to say something that would get Jesus in trouble because the priests and the leaders wanted to get rid of Jesus. They thought Jesus was going to take all their power away. And the last thing we learned was how the church leaders started to come up with a plan, an evil plan. And we'll learn more about those details tomorrow. So why did the author write this book? I think she wrote this book to teach us all about the first Easter and to help us get those details into our brain for the rest of our life. So thank you for listening and reading with me. We will read some more tomorrow. All right, take care. Cheers.